Okay, thank you for everybody that's joined us for this evening's presentation discussion. We have guests from all around the world, very unique. We have guests from Italy, New Zealand, Germany, Greece, Australia, Belgium, South Africa, UK, Mexico, Poland, Scotland, Portugal, Peru, Canada, USA, Latvia, Ukraine, Argentina, Puerto Rico, Hong Kong, and Ireland. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Thank
Israel.
you very much.
Israel.
As I was going to say, thank you, Rena. I was going to say hello from Israel. That is true, from a very hot and humid Israel. And I will, first of all, thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Rena. And I will hand over the evening to you, or the morning for others, to you, Debbie.
Thank you, Jeremy. My name is Debbie Berman. I've been privileged, I've been working at Yad Vashem for 14 years, very privileged in my work to have interacted and learned from and befriended and interviewed and hugged many, many Holocaust survivors. And I have to tell you that we have with us this evening Rena Quint, who is a very, very special and remarkable woman. And you will, I am sure, once you hear her story and you spend some time with her, you will walk away from this evening with a tremendous amount of knowledge and meaning that you can apply to your life. That's just for sure going to happen. Rena Quint is a former educator. She is a volunteer for so many Jewish organizations and causes that I can't even begin to start outlining them. She is a balabusta. She's an amazing cook and an amazing hostess. But most importantly to Rena, I know that she is a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother of a beautiful family here in Jerusalem. So we are very, very, very happy to have you with us here, Rena. Welcome. I'm honored and I'm a little bit moved to speak with you. Jeremy explained that we have so many visitors here from all over the world. Yad Vashem has been on and off closed for the past 6 months. Right now, our museum is not open to the public. Our campus is not open to the public. And I'm used to seeing you, Rena, surrounded by people, by young people, by groups from all over the world. You know, if I see you at Yad Vashem, you're never walking by yourself. You always have people around you asking you questions and engaging with you, and we miss you. I want to point out how important it is that we continue to get our messages of Holocaust commemoration and remembrance out to the world. Now more than ever, those messages are so, so important. And we thank you for taking the time to share your story with us tonight and be with us. Rena.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. And can you hear me?
We hear you perfectly. You're great. You got this Zoom thing completely down.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay, so do I go on?
You're fine. You don't need to do anything, just talk.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, well, I want to welcome all of you really from around the whole world. It's amazing to me. And I want to say good evening from Israel, or good morning or the afternoon to all of you, for wherever you are around the world, for joining this Yad Vashem conversation. We just finished the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and we're about to go into Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. In these holidays, we pray that we will be inscribed in the book of life. These holidays we ponder who will live and who will die, who by hunger and who by thirst, who by water and who by fire, who will die at a predestined time and who will die before his time, who will rest and who will wander, who by storm and who by plague. How could any of us imagine that we would be in this terrible plague, this coronavirus that has left the whole world upside down in turmoil? We hope and pray that all of us will be inscribed in the book of life with good health and prosperity, and may all those who are ill be blessed with speedy recoveries, and may all go back to a normal life.
Amen.
I was asked to speak to you, amen.
Amen.
I was asked to speak to you about my years in the Holocaust. My story is different from most stories that you've heard. 1.5 million Jewish children were killed for no reason except that they were Jewish children. I stayed alive. That makes me very different from 1.5 million. I was in the ages between 3.5 and 9.5. I remembered many things, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't talk about them for a long time. But in 1989, I went back to Piotrkow, the home that I came from, with Yad Vashem. And I found so many things that proved to me that my memories were correct. First of all, I found my birth certificate, which proved that I was really born, that I'm here. I found my brother's birth certificates. I found my parents' marriage license and the rabbi who married them, so that I knew that they were Jewish, religious people, probably, because he would not have married them had he not been there. Rabbi Meir Shapiro left Piotrkow, and Rabbi Chaim Meir Lau came in, and he was the chief rabbi. Unfortunately, he, with most of the people, like 20,000 people of Piotrkow, were annihilated in the Shoah. Okay. Most of them were taken to Treblinka.
Rena, I want to, because there's so much to say, and the people that are watching are not familiar with your story, and many of them not familiar with the historical context. So I want to try to break it down, and we'll start from the very beginning. And I want you to tell me a little bit about your life, what you can remember, what you were told about your family life and your childhood before the war, and the Jews of Piotrkow. Because before you answer, you're Rena Quint from Jerusalem tonight, but you really were born as Freida Lichtenstein in Piotrkow, Poland in 1935. So let's start from the beginning.
And that was one of my names. I had 6 names. I had 6 mothers. I have 2 birthdays. And the fact that I was born in Piotrkow, when I went back, I find out all these different things. I found my real birthday. My story is different because most children were in Christian homes or in hiding, where I was in the ghetto, a slave labor camp. I was in various concentration camps. I was liberated from Bergen-Belsen, a terrible concentration camp. And then I was sent to a DP camp in Sweden, and then adopted by an American family in America, where my life started afresh. My story is different because when you lose your mother and your father and your brothers, you're left alone. But as much as people say that people in the Holocaust were out for themselves, I can't say that. I always had somebody who became my, quote, mother. Maybe she wasn't a birth mother, but she certainly saved my life. I had 6 different mothers, maybe 7 or 8, I don't remember. And then my story is different because it has a happy ending. I was born in Piotrkow. I lived with my mother and father and 2 brothers in a house that maybe we have a picture to show you. And when I went back, I found a mezuzah still on the door. This was the house I lived in, and the mezuzah, you can still see the outline of it on the door. And the Christian woman who moved into the house when we were forced out still is living there. She remembered my father. I don't remember my mother or my father. Piotrkow was the first ghetto that was established when the Nazis came in September 1939.
Slow down, Rena. I want you to, way even before the Nazis came in, and I want you to tell me a little bit about who your parents were and what Jewish life was like in Piotrkow before. Tell me a little bit.
I don't remember my mother and father and brothers. Right. I don't know what they looked like. I don't remember my mother giving me a kiss or a hug or playing with my children. But I have read a great deal about Piotrkow. There was a big synagogue and many other little synagogues. 22% of the people were Jews living in Piotrkow, and it was a full Jewish life. This time of the year, people were busy preparing for the holidays with apples and honey, and the synagogue was filled and made white, and they had Torahs and a lot of love and things, but it stopped very quickly. When the ghetto stopped.
Can you tell me, I understood, I read your book today, and I really moved by everything that you shared in there, but I understand that your mother was a little bit ahead of her time in many ways. Can you tell me a little bit about your mother and what?
My mother was very much ahead of my times. When I think about it, and I went to a psychologist not long ago because I tried to remember more things that happened. And I thought, how did I live with my mother, whom I don't remember? But she apparently owned a store with paint. And my mother apparently came from a well-to-do family. So she had a pre-nuptial agreement in 1930.
It's fascinating.
Can you imagine?
It's fascinating.
A lawyer signed it and it was notarized. And my mother had white furniture, and she had a certain kind of clock, and she had carpeting, and she had 2 sewing machines, so she started my father off in business. I learned this. It's not something that I remember. I was 3.5 years old.
Exactly.
By the time I was 6, we were put in, the ghetto was going on strong.
Okay,
And
now let's go back. Let's go back to where I'm sorry that I had to have cut you off a little bit. Let's go back to September 5th, 1939, when the Germans come and invade Piotrkow. They enter the Jewish quarter, and
they entered in Piotrkow. Planes were coming in overhead. There were cars going through, wagons, and there were horses lying in the streets, and people and dogs. Everybody was running. Some people ran into the basement thinking they would help. Some people started running to different cities and to Russia. Nothing helped. Every place you ran, the Nazis came afterwards. We were completely surrounded. There wasn't enough food. People who lived outside of the ghetto had to move out of their apartments and move into the ghetto. So it became very, very crowded.
Right, just the historical step that you skipped a little bit is when after the invasion, the Germans then rounded up all the Jews from Piotrkow and the surrounding areas and forced them into an enclosed area, which was the ghetto of Piotrkow.
Right. So
Right.
an apartment that was nice for one family, you'd have 6 families. And there wasn't enough food, and there wasn't enough medicine, and typhus was very prevalent. It was spreading very, very quickly. People were dying, but they weren't dying fast enough for Hitler and his henchmen. So one night, in the middle of the night, the Nazis, with helpers from Ukrainian and Lithuanians, came in, banging down at the door, yelling, "Rouse, rouse, everybody. Got 10 minutes to pack up whatever you need and run down those stairs." We have a picture of those stairs. They were terrible stairs. You can see those stairs there. You can also see the parquet floor and the beautiful closet that my mother had with silver in it. I wish some of it I could have taken. It belongs to this woman. I didn't want to take anything, but I would have so much liked to have known what my mother used, what belonged to her. But we had to run down these stairs.
Yes.
We were told we could take whatever we need. We had 10 minutes. What would you take if you had 10 minutes? Would you take food? Would you take warm clothing? Would you take the baby? Some people, even in Yad Vashem, there's an exhibit of a key. People took keys because they locked the door thinking they're going to come back. Nobody believed of what would happen. We ran down those stairs. People fell one on top of each other. They were crying, they were moaning, until we came into a big square. It's called Platz Chernetskigo. There's the square. You can see on top of the picture, when the wall was taken down, because we were there in '89, you can see the shape of the area where the wall had been there. But here is this big square. It used to be for marketing days. On Tuesdays and Fridays, people used to come and buy their fish and their clothing and their vegetables. But now 2,000 people were taken from their homes and brought into this square. And from there, we were beaten and chased like herds, a herd of animals, just one after the other, until we were brought into the synagogue. The synagogue was a beautiful place, a few blocks away from there. There is the synagogue. It is still standing. And you can see on the bottom that I am looking at the Magen David, the Jewish star. There are no Jews left in Piotrkow, not one. So there's no need for a synagogue. So it's now a library. So the picture on top shows you where the synagogue had been converted to a library. In the back there, notice that there's a door. That door was very, very important to me.
So I want you to tell us what happened to you, to little Freidel, 3.5-year-old Freidel and her family on that horrible night. It was October 14th, 1942. What happened to you?
We were brought into the synagogue, into this big room. 2,000 people couldn't get into the synagogue. As many as they could, they pushed into the chamber. The others were brought into a smaller schoolhouse next door, and the ones who couldn't get in were taken out into the forest. They had to dig ditches, and they became their graves, and they were shot into those graves. I was there with my mother and my 2 brothers, David and Yossi. There's a door in the back of that synagogue. On the other side of that door, there was a man. I'm not sure he was, but I think he may have been my uncle or someone I called my uncle. The door was open, and he beckoned to me, and he said, Freida, my name was Freida or Freidel, run. I don't know how I could have possibly run. I don't know how I possibly had the courage or the guts. I will read to you from my book exactly. The German guards can shoot me. They can hit me over the head and push me back. For some reason they don't. Maybe they think that the next soldier who sees me will kill me. Perhaps the guard is bribed. Maybe I have the resourcefulness and guts to respond to a call that man called me and he saved my life. I'm holding my mother's hand. I let go of my mother's hand. I don't look back. I am running. This man scoops me up in his runs and we run for shelter. The heavy synagogue door closes behind me. I remember escaping. I can remember letting go of my mother's hand and her letting go of my hand. I am 6.5 years old. My mother's hand, my mother's hand, my mother's hand. How does a little girl let go of her mother's hand? My mother opens her clutched fingers. She lets me go. She saves my life. How does a little girl run away from her mother and her brothers when she's so scared? I never see my mother or my brothers or any of those people again. I ran away, but those people were put into these cattle cars and taken to Treblinka. Treblinka was one of the 6 major extermination camps. I can't imagine what my mother was thinking. Was she worried about letting her little girl go into a neighborhood that she didn't know with somebody she didn't know? Was she thinking, thank goodness my little Freida ran away? When they got to Treblinka, they had to get undressed and leave everything they had and go in on a long line waiting and hearing the screams of the people who had gone into the gas chambers before. They didn't know of the gas chambers, but the screaming went on, and when the screaming stopped, they had other Jewish men pull out the bodies and bury them on the side of the camp there in pyres. And then my mother and brothers got their turn. All of those people were killed. When you go to Treblinka right now, there were 17,000 stones, 7,000 to remember, 70,000 to remember the people who were killed in Treblinka. Nobody was left in Treblinka. This man, can you see the picture of that?
Yeah, Martin's putting it up right now.
There is Treblinka, and there are the stones. The bodies later on exhumed were Hitler. That's the stone of Piotrkow. And that's me lighting a candle when I went back with one of the March of the Living groups. People go back to Treblinka and they light these memorial candles to remember Jews who were killed there. I never saw any of those people again. There you are. That's my husband standing next to those graves. And not graves, they're stones. Nobody's buried under those stones. Those people were all buried, and then they put fires onto them, and there was nothing left but the ashes and the bones. When you walk there now, you can still feel bones and ashes. I never saw my mother. I never saw any of them. But this man took me to my father. My father had been taken to a slave labor factory, a glass factory. What was my father supposed to do with me? For a while he hid me. When that was no longer possible, he told me, this is what we have to do. He cut my hair. He changed my name from Freida to Freud, the masculine. He taught me to speak Polish in the gender of a boy. And I became a boy. Actually, I became a man of 10. Girls were useless. Boys under the age of 10 were also not really necessary, but boys over the age of 10 could work. I became the boy of 10. How I did it, I don't know.
How did you do that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm not that
Remarkable.
tall. I'm not that masculine looking. When you have to do something, I guess the adrenaline goes. My father tried to watch me. The other men helped me, hide me when somebody came in. My job was to carry water. I was a water carrier where they used the water sometimes to drink it, although I don't think the Germans really cared about being thirsty. But if you wanted to work and if you would faint because you wouldn't have the water, they needed you to work. Also, the glass had to be put into cold water, and I did that. There were dogs all the time. And one of those dogs would sick you and bite you and hurt your arm. If you couldn't lift your arm, they would kill you. The whole purpose was to have you working. And if you wouldn't work, you were just useless. People were being killed all the time. Men helped me in many different ways. But one day, as much as we worked and as much as we tried, the Germans decided they didn't want any Jews left in Poland. And we were again taken out on march to the Umschlagplatz, where were these cattle cars waiting for us. 80 to 100 people were pushed into those cattle cars. They packed it as much as possible. There was nothing to eat those cars. There was nothing to drink. There was no toilet. And you had to get used to it. Sometimes people who came from faraway places, you could be on those cars for 2 and 3 days until they finally brought you. All the extermination camps, 6 of them, Auschwitz, Majdanek, Sobibor, Chelmno, Belzec, and Sobibor, were in Poland. Why? Because most of the Jews they wanted to kill were in Poland. All the train tracks led into the camps. And the Polish people at that point didn't mind seeing full cars coming in with people and empty cars leaving. Didn't anybody ask, where do these people sleep? Where do they eat? Where do they work? Nobody cared. Nobody said anything. Full cars with people came in, empty cars left. When we crossed the border from Poland to Germany, we jumped out from those cars, whoever was still alive. The dead bodies were thrown out, and there was snow on the ground. It seems to me there was always snow on the ground. I'm sure there must have been spring and summer, and I've been back to Poland where there was spring and there was a sunshine. I never remember it being warm during those days. We jumped down from the cars in the snow. We used the snow to eat it. We used the snow to drink it. We used the light to look around to see who was still there, who was still alive. And while we were getting used to this new scene, Germans on motorcycles, 2 together, came rolling up, and with megaphones, they made an announcement. You're being taken to camps. Men on one side, women on the other. I was in a man's camp, but there were 2 other groups. There was woodworking and there was tanning of leather. My father realized if they separated the men and women, when we were going to be taken into camps, we were filthy, we were disgusting, we were full of lice and we were full of dirt, and the Germans didn't want filthy Jews. They would send us into the showers. We didn't know about gas showers. My father realized if I get undressed and go into the showers, they will see I'm not one of the men. I'm not a boy. He met a school teacher whom he knew, and he asked her if she would look after me. He gave me some pictures of my mother and my father, my brothers, David and Yassi, and he promised to meet me after the war in our hometown of Piotrkow. He promised. He promised. Fathers are supposed to keep their promises. My father didn't keep his promise. I never saw him again. I did find a train schedule from Arlsen, where I found a lot of information. This is an international tracing bureau, where my father was taken to Buchenwald with the men, and I was taken to Bergen-Belsen with the women. I never saw my father, but I had a new mother. I don't remember her name. I don't remember what she looked like, but she said, come Freida, we will walk together, like daughter and mother. We walked in the snow. I don't know if I was barefoot or if I had clogs, but when I came into the United States and I was adopted by an American family, there were a lot of things wrong with me. And one of them is that I had frozen toes. And they took me to a doctor. And the doctor says, it's a typical case of frozen toes, but nobody has frozen toes in the United States. Once he found out that it was possible that I had walked in the snow, not only did I have one frozen toe, but frozen feet. But thank God I can walk on those feet and I'm all right. As we were walking on the high mountain, down below, In the valley, there were two men with their pants down, freezing cold in the snow. Why would there be blind men with tow? Later on, I found out if a Jewish woman ran away, maybe she could pretend to be a Christian. If a Jewish man ran away and he was circumcised, it was a dead giveaway. So women had in that way a little bit better chance. When we came into Bergen-Belsen, just the way my father predicted, we had to go to the showers. We had to leave everything that we had, not that we had very much, but I had pictures. My father gave me a picture of my mother and father and my brothers. I was holding it tightly in my hand. I guess one of the soldiers thought maybe I had a ring or jewelry or money. He pried open my hand and all he found was pictures. Must have been very upsetting to him. He tore them from my hand, he tore them up and threw them away. To him it was garbage. To me it would have been, do I look like my mother, my father, my brothers, my grandparents? Nobody. Everybody in the family was gone. There was no one that I could be with. When we came out of the showers, just the way my father had said we would, we were freezing cold, it was cold weather. And every 5 or 6 women would get a blanket to cover themselves, and we got some old rag. This woman, this new mother of mine, whose name I don't know, stole a black coat. I think she saved my life because it was so cold, and she kept her arms and the black coat around me to give us a little bit of heat. Don't know what happened to the black coat. I don't know what happened to the woman, but I know that she saved my life. In Bergen-Belsen, the most important thing was food. And the food we got was soup that smelled like garbage because it was made out of garbage. People died left and right. The barracks were filled with dead bodies, moaning people, the smells. You could go to the bathroom outside in a pit. People were afraid to go and they didn't have enough strength to go. So we soiled ourselves and we were lying there. And I don't know how I got there, but I found myself lying under trees in Bergen-Belsen with many other people, many of them dead and some of them half alive. I can read to you from my book the passage of when I was lying under those trees. I am ready to die. I find a spot near a tree and lie down. Men, women, and children, some like me, not yet dead, lie here too. A breeze stirs my hair. It brings the stench of the dead, the smell that I am used to. Dying under a tree will be nicer than in the stinking barracks. All the fences are lined with bodies piled higher than a man standing tall. Not that men stand tall anymore. I am 9 years old. I've spent most of my childhood in a ghetto, a work camp, concentration camps, and a death march. Bergen-Belsen is the worst of all. There is no water, not even in the filthy puddles of yesterday. The Germans claim that the water pipes were bombed. When the British came in, they were able to reinstitute the water. Suddenly the quiet is broken. I hear an unfamiliar sound and look up. People are running. Men and women who never walk faster than a shuffle are running. I want to see where they're going, but I can't stand up. I'm sick. I have typhus. Typhus is the kind of sickness where you can't see, you can't hear. You've got like vertigo. People who never talk louder than they're loud are shouting. Soldiers in khaki uniforms are walking nearby. I can tell those are German soldiers by the way the prisoners greet them with shouts of joy. How strange. Some of the soldiers are throwing up. Nazi soldiers never threw up. "Ihr seid frei, you are free," are words on the loudspeakers. "We are the English army. Be calm. Food and medical help are on the way. Frei, frei, we are free," women shout around me in Yiddish. What does free mean? I don't understand. I am so sick and too tired to move. I want my mother. That was the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. The soldiers smelled the camp before they came in. And when they came in, they saw these horrors of thousands of bodies, 10,000 naked bodies lying around. The first thing they had to do was bury all those dead bodies. And they used some of the German soldiers and other people to help them put them into mass graves. Then they tried to feed people. And 14,000 people died after the war because the British, I'm not blaming them, but they gave them food. And after you haven't eaten for so long, you can't eat normal food until the British realized that they have to give food that it meant they. 2,000 people died because their stomachs just couldn't take it. And then they took care of people like me who were very sick, but maybe with the proper care, they could be helped. And I was put on a stretcher, and they made makeshift hospitals, and I was brought into the hospital. And I was given medicine, and I was cleaned up. They had these showers and all kinds of disinfecting tools to get us cleaned up, to get the lice out of our hair. And because I was one of the lucky ones, Sweden had opened its doors to 6,000 refugees from German concentration camps. And I was one of them. And they put me on a stretcher, and they took me to a place called Lübeck. And from there, they would be put on a ship to go to Sweden. When I got to Sweden, and I have all the records of, oh, that's me, that's a picture of me and my friend Lucia in Sweden. But I also have the records where I went into a DP camp, a displaced persons camp. And that's me down on the bottom there. And this was at the end of Sweden, where we already got better and we looked normal. And they gave us all kinds of puddings and vitamins and olive oil to drink, castor oil. It was terrible, but it really did bring us back to health. While I was there in Sweden, while I was in the hospital, because I had typhus and diphtheria, and I have a temperature chart, which Barbara Sofer, who helped me write this book, wrote to the Swedish hospital in a place called Hasselholm, and they still had all the records from 1945. I guess if you know how to search for things, we found a lot of things about me. While I was there, a wonderful, beautiful young Swedish couple came to visit me, and they brought me a doll, and they brought me a little wooden sculpture and candy canes, and they asked me if I wanted to go home with them. I was blonde, and I guess I could fit into the Swedish company, and they felt sorry for me. I wanted desperately to go with this family. But the people around me said that I was Jewish, and the Jewish children belonged in a place called Palestine. Why did I say Palestine? Because in 1945, there was no Israel. Just imagine, had Israel been born just 3 years earlier in 1945, no, just 10 years earlier in 1938 instead of 48, before the war. How many Jewish people, how many Jewish children could have been saved? But thank God we have an Israel now. But at that time, I wanted to go with that Christian family, but the people around me said that my mother and my father and my brothers, and maybe other relatives, were all in Palestine, and that's where I was going to be taken with the other orphans. So I stayed. But fate had a different role for me. Fate always had a role for me. I didn't have much of a choice of things. And while I was there, I met a woman, her name was Anna Philip Stahl, and she had a son, Sigmund, who was 15 and a half years old, and a daughter who was 9. Her name was Fanny. Her brother, Anna's brother, had gone to the United States for the war, and he sent her tickets. Somebody had to sponsor you, and this David Pine sponsored Anna and Fanny and Sigmund to come to the United States. There were quotas, you had need visas, you needed a sponsor. Those 3 people were going to go. Well, they were waiting for their ship to go to America, and I was waiting for mine to go to Palestine. This little girl, Fanny, died. Her mother had the papers, her mother had the passports, and I had the luck. And she asked me if I'd like to be her daughter. Well, of course I wanted to be somebody's daughter all the time. I got her name, so now my name is Fanny. I got her birthday. Fanny didn't need that birthday, she was dead. So I got her birthday, and I didn't have one of my own. I got a new mother, I got a new brother. She was born in Germany, I said I was born in Poland. Well, okay, so I was everything about that child became me. My picture was put into the passport, and I came on a ship with Rockingham with Anna and Sigmund to the United States. And on the ship, nobody talked about the Holocaust. Nobody talked about the killing. Nobody talked about the starvation. Everybody just looked forward to going to the United States. And we came there and we saw the Statue of Liberty and we were so thrilled. And when we came off, I was registered as Fanny Philipsthal, the daughter of Anna Philipsthal. Anna's family met us and took us to a place in Long Island, in New York. And the children started teaching me English. They started teaching me different things. I had all the food I wanted. I had drinks. I was clean. It was a different life. Nobody talked about the Holocaust. And in the summertime, we went up to bungalow colonies, little homes up in the country where people went for the summer months. And I went with my new mother and my new brothers, and I went swimming, and I went to camp, and I picked blueberries, and I learned to play jacks and ride a bicycle, and life was wonderful. Nobody talked about the past. But one day, my new mother, Anna, disappeared. It didn't worry me so much because all the women were very good to me, and they gave me food, and I had a bed, and nobody was being shot. But one day, shortly after Anna left, her family came from Lyndhurst, Long Island, and they said, they changed my name from Fanny to Frances. My name was always being changed. I sort of got used to that. And they said, we have to leave. We have to go back. Something terrible has happened. I didn't know what happened. I didn't understand. And they took us to a place in Farmingdale. There were a lot of stones, and there was grass and shrubbery, and there was an open hole there, and everybody was weeping, and everybody was crying except me. I didn't know why. Apparently, Anna had died. One person died, and so many people were crying. In Bergen-Belsen, there were 10,000 bodies lying around. Every day, you just threw out body after body, and nobody cried. Nobody even thought of crying. And here, one person died, and everybody was crying. Maybe they thought I didn't love Anna because I wasn't crying. I did love Anna. I just didn't know how to cry, and I didn't know you were supposed to cry when somebody died. We went home, and we said Shiva. Jewish people said 7 days of mourning. And while we were there, his family that brought Anna and her 2 children over had a problem. They brought Anna over, and she was going to take care of me as her daughter. But now that she was no longer alive, they didn't want me. And what do they do with me? And I guess there was a lot of discussion. I was not privy to that. And one of the people knew a family in Brooklyn, New York. Their name was Leah and Jacob Globe. And they were childless. They were married for 10 years and they never had a child. And they called them and they said, you know what? Maybe you'd like to have a little girl, a Holocaust survivor, and she needs a home. You could use a child. Would you like to meet her? Well, they agreed, and I was taken there, and I was told to behave. I'm not sure I knew what it was like to behave. It's one thing to behave in Bergen-Belsen. It's another thing to behave in Brooklyn, New York. I knew you're supposed to smile and say please and thank you. I didn't know very much English. I came in, and Leah and Jacob opened the door, and they welcomed me, and they made me feel very much at home. But there was one thing there that really worried me. They had a little dog. I was terrified of dogs because I remember those dogs when I was in the Hortensia glass factory. And when those dogs took a bite of you, that was like a death sentence. I wasn't going to show them that I was afraid of the dog. Maybe they liked the dog better than me, and I needed a home. So I was just very careful. And the dog, his name was Buddy, followed me. And after a while, he became my good friend. And they took me into their home, and they fed me, and it was Shabbat, and we sang songs, and they took me to the synagogue. And when it was time to go back, they asked me a question that had been asked of me many times. Would you like to stay and be our daughter? Well, by now you know that I always wanted to be somebody's daughter. And yes, yes, I certainly want to be their daughter. They changed my name. My name that started off as Freidel. Freidel means joy. Joy in Hebrew means Rena. They gave me the name Rena. In 1946, when I came to them, it was a new name. Now it's a very popular name. I love the name Rena, and they gave that to me. And they gave me a wonderful life. It was a very good Jewish life. I got a very good education. I learned to play the cello. I had friends. I went traveling. I met the most wonderful, wonderful man. And I was married to Rena Quint for almost 60 years. These are my parents, Leah and Jacob Globe. Syracuse University, what I'm wearing, is where my, quote, brother, he went there and he left the family. And he changed the names to Stanley Phillips instead of Sigmund Philipsthal. And I didn't have anything to do with him until a few years ago when, through Facebook, I found his wife and his daughter. And since then, we've sort of been in touch. They live in Florida, but they came to Israel, and we spent 2 wonderful weeks. And I was being honored at dinner, and we honored them, and I gave them plaques. And the plaques said, to my daughter-in-law, meaning Anna, the woman who had adopted me, who died, even though she didn't give birth to me, she gave me life. And here I met her granddaughter and her daughter-in-law. But these people, Leah and Jacob Globe, took care of me. And then I got married, and I had 4 children with my husband, and then we had 22 grandchildren, and we have so far 32 great-grandchildren. My husband every day wrote me notes, beautiful notes, on yellow posted, you know, those yellow, well, here's a green one, those sticker pads.
We have some. We have a few of those notes.
Oh, wow.
We have
That's
some
my
pictures of the
wedding.
wedding. Yes.
That's my parents, but after that, oh, well, you missed.
Martin's got them. There's the
Well, okay,
wedding.
that's
Look
my
at you.
wedding.
Look
with
at you
my
at the
father.
wedding.
And
Gorgeous.
that's my husband and me wearing a white kittel, and here I am in a beautiful dress, a bride, like any bride in the United States. Nobody would ever think that I had been a child who survived the Holocaust by herself. I was not an orphan. I was definitely part of that family, and they treated me wonderfully. And that's my husband and me at my grandson's bar mitzvahs or something. These are the notes he wrote every day. He wrote thanking God for saving my life, and I was saved for him. And he would write, darling Rena, my wonderful darling Rena, my precious daughter, my darling, my most magnificent Rena. If you get the book, or if you want to, I will send these notes to you. And everybody who comes into my house, they're all over I have pictures and notes every place. I have not taken them down, even though he passed away 2 years ago. And I have stacks in photograph books and albums, and I love those notes. And he really made me feel that I was special, saved for him and for our children. That is on the side there, those 2 little children, now they're much older. My grandson, who's putting this wreath on, they were the future generations in Yad Vashem. And so thank God they have them. On the bottom, there's a picture of one of our family outings. It was somebody's bar mitzvah, Roni's bar mitzvah. But of course, we've grown. We have now 22 grandchildren and 32 great-grandchildren. And with God's help, we're growing. One of our daughters just got engaged, and somebody else just became pregnant. So we're hoping to go on. So you can see the picture on top of a wedding and the bar mitzvah. And I think that all of us have to remember that the holiday that we're in now, Rosh Hashanah, is also called Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembrance. But there's a day that we want God to remember us, but we also have to remember the people there. And I think we have to laugh as much as we can and love as much as we can and be kind to each other and hope that we stay well. We have to be the people they never had a chance to be. And thank God, we have an Israel, and we have a country, and we have doctors, and we hope life will go on. If anybody has any questions or any comments, I would be glad to answer.
Yeah, if you have questions, you can write them in the chat, and we'll share them with Rena. I have one question
Sure.
that somebody sent already earlier.
Yeah.
And it's up here.
Isn't
Rena,
it amazing, the Zoom, that we're all over the
it's
world?
unbelievable, unbelievable. People all over the world are
Unbelievable.
hearing you, Rena. It's moving.
I
Okay,
hope this
Deb, we have a
corona will be
question.
over. Yes, please.
A question for you. What kept you going during those terribly difficult years? Where were you able to find meaning and motivation to keep going?
I don't know how the answer is. I think as a child, maybe life was easier for me because I didn't know that this was not the normal way. But there were always people around me who helped me. And that's what you have to remember, that there are people who are good and who need you. I think what I was hoping for every day, you just sort of hope that you would get something to eat and something warm to do. And you just wanted to live. You just wanted to live. I don't know what kept me going. I did not know about God. I did not know about a different world. I don't remember toys. I don't remember anything of a normal life. I didn't start my life really until I was almost 10 years old.
Did you, someone else asks if you ever struggled with faith, with your faith?
Well, while I was in the concentration camps, I didn't know about faith and I didn't know about God. And I don't know if anybody talked about it. But had I stayed in Sweden with this Christian couple, I could have been a good Christian woman. But luckily, I was adopted by a Jewish conservative family, and they brought me up in a very Jewish religious way. And then I married my husband, who was more observant than I was. And he went a little to my way and I went to his way. And thank God we brought up our children all living a Jewish life. And then everybody wanted to come to Israel. And we came here. And it was such a good thing. I'm living in Israel now for 34 years. And it was the best thing we ever did. My husband was a very successful lawyer. And he also had smicha. He was a rabbi. When we were in Brooklyn, he was a lawyer. But when we came to Israel, he started teaching. And he wrote 17 books. Each one of them he inscribed to me from Psalms. He took different sayings with the word Rena, which means joy, and laughter and gladness. And we lived our life to the fullest, really to the fullest.
Okay, another question, Rena. Can you still remember some of your Polish? Can you still speak some Polish?
No. I don't know if I ever spoke Polish. When I came to the United States, I spoke Yiddish. In the camps, Yiddish was the language, because if you had somebody from Greece and somebody from Germany and somebody from Poland and Czechoslovakia, people did know these languages. Yiddish was the common language. And that's what I spoke until I learned English. But I learned English very quickly because nobody around me spoke anything else. And when I came, my parents sent me into a public school. I didn't do very well there because the people just didn't know how to handle a 10-year-old who didn't know how to spell, who didn't know the ABCs, didn't know how to count, didn't know how to tie her shoelace. I didn't know all the things that other children learn when they're 3, 4, 5, and 6. I learned all those things when I was 10. And luckily, when I had my children, I was able to play with their toys and realize this is what I missed. But thank God I was able to make it up.
Okay, another question. When and why did you decide to write your book?
I just think it's very important for people to know. And there are all kinds of studies now. They claim that the millennials in the United States, many of them can't even mention one camp. Many of people don't, anti-Semitism is very prevalent right now. The BDS movement, there are so many people who would like to wipe Israel off the map. But we are now starting a new thing. We're becoming friendly with some of the Arab countries. We have an Israel, we have an army, we have a government. Unfortunately, we have this corona, but we're going to get over that soon. And we sort of felt that this was the best place for us to be.
Okay, one more. Is there a certain point that you felt that you were no longer a child due to everything that happened to you? How did you manage to hold on to that? Do you think it was women that took you and became your mothers?
when I was working in the factory, I was not a child. I was a man really doing a man's job, and I worked all through. When I came into the United States and I went to camp, I learned to swim. I learned to play ball. I learned to play Monopoly, and I became a child very much there. And I started going to school, and I had a good education. I had a BA, and I had a master's, and I played the piano and the cello, and I went traveling. I went on a bicycle trip. My parents were very good about it. They let me go on a bicycle trip through Europe, and I came to Israel many times. And then when we came here, my husband and I loved traveling, and I felt like just a free person. We went to China and to Hong Kong and to Paris and to Spain, and always ended up in Israel. With every trip that we took, one of the ways going back was going to Paris. Just you come first to Israel, and then on the way back there, you go to. When we went to Poland, we went with the Vashem, and then I went with groups as a survivor, speaking to them, and I think I made a difference. When we went to, when I was in Treblinka one time, I couldn't find the stone the first time I was there. There's 17,000 stones, and I didn't know where the stone of Piotrkow was. But I had seen a movie that Rabbi Lau and his brother Naftali Lavi had been there the year before, and I called up to find out, could you tell me approximately where it is? And I was on 7 different buses with the March of the Living, and on every bus that I went to, I would say, if anybody finds the stone of Piotrkow, please call out Rena, call me, and I'll find it. And we got into Treblinka, and it was raining. It was always raining in Treblinka, it seems to me. I've been there many times now. And this boy ran over to me and he said, Rena, I found your stone. I prayed I'd find your stone. He wasn't the kind of kid that you would even expect that he was listening to me. But he said, I wanted to find it. I come from Argentina. Many of the people in my family are not Jewish, and the ones who are don't have anything to do with it. Now that I found your stone, I'm part of the Jewish people. So if I can make a difference like that to somebody, then I think it's important. When I wrote my book, the book was selling very, very well until Corona stopped and I stopped speaking. But I also have a lot of people. I'd like to welcome all of you to come to my home when this terrible disease, this COVID-19 is over.
Amen.
And
Amen.
I have people, we have something called Shabbat of a Lifetime where people come, and we have 20 and 30 people sitting around many tables there, and we discuss. We talk about the Shabbat, we talk about what's happening in the world, everybody talks about their travel plans, and we enjoy life. And that's what I think we have to do. We have to live with the people who didn't live.
I have one last question, and thank you so much, Rena. Thank you from all of us and from us at Yad Vashem as well. I know it takes a lot out of you to tell your story. One last question from a young person. She's a 19-year-old journalism student. Says that, I don't know if it's a he, sorry, not a she. Absolutely excited to learn from you. The question is, what inspiring message do you have for young people today?
Oh, I want to read to you when you speak about a journalist. I invite people to my home all the time. And there was this journalist, her name is Anna Rummensfeld from Hamburg, Germany. And she wrote, she met somebody and she said she'd never met a Holocaust survivor. Can you imagine? In Hamburg, Germany. And when she came here, she wrote, Rena is the first Holocaust survivor I met in person. I was deeply shaken by her story and moved by the kindness she showed towards me and my generation of Germans. And I can't describe the joy I felt of seeing and hearing how her life has turned out. It's a real life happy ending after such an unimaginable suffering. I'm glad she's sharing her story. The crimes committed during the Holocaust must never be forgiven. This is from a German journalist student. And since she was here, every year, the students who graduate the journalist group come to Israel, and I invite them here, and we get a chance to talk to each other, and we really go around the table discussing of what happened and how do we prevent from happening. And the more we talk about it and the more we realize what happened, the more we can have a chance of living happily together.
Absolutely. Okay, I think that our time is up, our hour is up. It's been incredibly moving hearing
If
you share.
anybody has a question, you can write to Yad Vashem and they will.
We will forward it to
hear it.
Rena. And we'll
And
forward
here,
all your comments. We'll make sure she reads everything.
yeah.
Yes.
And this is the book, A Daughter of Many Mothers. As I had said, I had at least 6 mothers that I can account for, but maybe even more. And I've really found so much information, amazing. And if you want to know how to do research, I'll be glad to tell you that also.
We are so grateful, Rena, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back at Yad Vashem, surrounded
too.
by young people.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.